Uh,
How you doing, Don? How you doing, Bob?
Bob, are you there?
Bob is muted.
I am. I'm here. Sorry about that.
No problem. Welcome,
I'm
everybody, to Exploring the New Age, the interviews. We got Bob Wright with us tonight. Julien, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, despite the technical setbacks of not getting to use
Bob Wright with us
the
tonight.
old tool.
Julien, how you doing tonight?
I think we're on a roll here with what we need to use, and that's going to be Google Hangouts.
Okay. Yes, so I don't know. We may have to make this a permanent switch. I don't know. We'll have to talk about that because that's a couple shows in a row we've had kind of the problems. Bob, so welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I've wanted to talk to you for quite a while and been following you for several years now, off and on. Let's just get into it. We were kind of chatting a little bit before the show, and I was going to say, let's talk a little bit about your biography, and you laughed that we may not have time for that all the time because it starts out when you're 4 years old. So
Yes, and I'm 40. I'll be 49.
aha, okay, I
So
got you beat.
yeah,
I
I'm
still got you
getting
beat. Um,
So if we
so
chop that up, that's about 30 seconds to a minute for every year of your life. Can we do that?
we'll try. I will sum up.
perfect. So tell us a little bit. Start out when you were 4, because this is a very interesting story. It's like
Well,
most people don't even remember when they're 4. I don't. I think my earliest
you know,
memory is when I was 5.
I remember all the way back to 6 months. I tell my mom. I remember having this conversation with my mother, and she before I was born, she had gone to a fortune teller, and the fortune teller told her that she was going to have 6 children, which she did, and that one was going to die, which it did, and that one of her children would be different, that he would be born different, and it would be a marked occasion, and that I would be instrumental in helping to change the world. And she, now this was before she got involved with the Jehovah Witness Church, so she took it to heart, and she went to work on bringing forth that child. um, I was the only. All of my brothers and sisters were accidents. I was planned by my mom, and I would guess when I was born in Bitburg, Germany, and my parents told me, and she knew immediately that who I was when I was born, because she said when I was born in a little town right outside of the borders of France in Bitburg, and when I was born, she said that the whole town, she said that she had never seen anything like it. They were lined up down the street, around the corner, to come into the house when I had come home from the hospital to see me, because their reasoning was because they had never seen in that part of Germany a black baby before. But so
Okay.
Interesting.
yeah, and she goes, I'd never seen all these people come up, and I knew it was you. And I don't remember a lot, but I do remember from the time that I was 4, and I was telling you earlier, I was a weirdo from the get-go. When I was 4 years old, back in 1972, we had a hurricane here, and it was called Hurricane Agnes. A whole valley here was flooded. It was the largest natural disaster of that time in the United States. And we had a whole family move up to our family farm in the mountains in Pennsylvania, just for safety, just to get out of the city. And so I was up there with my aunts and uncles and 40 of my cousins in one house and 2 trailers. And I remember the one night my cousins coming out, like there was a search party out for me. they were out looking for me, and they found me out in the woods, and they were like, "What are you doing out here?" I was like, "I'm waiting for the ship," and I was waiting for the ship. You know, I don't. I have slight memories of being on a ship in a classroom with other children, but what I remember most vividly were nightly visits. I would get, and now in retrospect, thinking back, I realized that these were probably grays, because I remember these three little guys, and they all looked exactly the same, and I didn't like the way they looked. And as soon as I thought, I don't like the way you guys look, they immediately chose a different form, because to me they were little short little guys, and I thought of them as elves. And
Oh, okay.
they immediately took the form of elves, also, which looked exactly alike. And I was like, I can't tell you apart. What's your names? And they didn't have names, so they just said 1, 2, and 3. And so I called them Peter 1, Peter 2, and Peter 3, because they were like Peter Pan to me. And they took me on all kinds of adventures. We would go flying, astral projecting, and this was a very strong connection I had when I was younger. These paranormal experience, speaking with spirits, speaking with what my parents said, people who weren't there. And I had a very, very strong connection with my younger brother. He was 2 years younger than me, and before he could even talk, I remember the one time my brother was, my mom had him set in a car seat, and it was on top of the table, and she was getting ready for work, and he would not stop crying. He was screaming, hollering, crying. And my mom kept trying to, check his pamper. There was nothing. As soon as she picked him up, he'd stop. As soon as she put him back down on the chair, he'd start screaming like he was in excruciating pain. And she's like, "I don't know what to do with your brother. See if you can help him." Now I was 4, or 3 at the time. And because he wasn't talking. So I looked at my brother, and then I looked back at my mom. I says, the belt buckle is poking his back. It's underneath the blanket. And so she picked him up, and she lifted the blanket, and sure enough, the belt buckle had been folded up, and it was jabbing in his back, and that's what was hurting him. She goes, "How did you know that?" And I was like, "He told me." And she's like, "He can't talk." I was like, "Yes, he can." But he was telecommunicating with me, and we've had this connection our whole life. We still do. Extremely close to my brother. He's also had very similar experiences of just being on that edge of realities, I guess. That's the only way I can put it, where you're getting the bleed through from somewhere else. Now, that was through most of my childhood, and it stopped, I guess, probably when I was around 12. Like, right when I started hitting puberty, then my relationship with spirit kind of changed. But I remember when I was 12 years old, I was visited, and I'll never. This was probably up until that point in my life. It was definitely the most fantastic experience I had ever had, and it was. I was 12 years old, and instead of Peter 1, Peter 2, and Peter 3, that normally came to visit me, there was this dragon, this beautiful blue iridescent dragon that visited me, and it was, this was before the never-ending story, so but he didn't frighten me. He wasn't frightening. He was more of a Falcor type of dragon, really friendly. And his name was Toriah, and I remember the name because he impressed it, and this was, you understand, this was not a dream. This was realer than reality.
Right.
And I got on Toriah, and Toriah took me out across the solar system, and I was on this asteroid, and I could see not just our solar system, but I could see across the whole galaxy, and he was showing me where all the different civilizations were. And he introduced me to another dragon, a beautiful white dragon. This was a female dragon named Camellia. And Kamalaya and Taraya took me around, and they introduced me to some of their friends, one of which was Pegasus, who I recognized Pegasus. Actually got to see him, pet him, and ride him. It was for a 12-year-old. This was like for anybody. This was like
Oh,
the
sure.
This was
But,
just it was incredible.
well, now you were raised as a Jehovah Witness. How did those two parts of your life work together, and how did your parents take all of this information?
Like I said, I was weird. I was weirdo from the get-go. So I was kind of used to being different, and knowing that not everybody was experiencing what I was experiencing. You find that out really quick when when you're younger. I remember I got misplaced. I was in a department store with my mother, and she had. I used to like to hide in the little carousels of clothes where she was shopping, and I would crawl in. It was like my own little world, and I would crawl under there. It was like a little hideaway for me, and I had crawled in there. And she lost sight of me and starts looking around the store in a panic because she thought somebody had abducted me, or I don't know. And she started screaming for me, screaming my name, and I came out and I stood behind her, and she was talking to people, asking, "Did you see a little boy? Did you see a little bear?" She turned around and almost knocked her over. She almost knocked me over. She looked at me and she grabbed me and she picked me up. She goes, "Why did you do that?" And she's, "Didn't you hear me calling? Didn't you hear me calling?" And I was like, "Yeah, I heard you calling." She goes, "Well, why didn't you say something?" And I said, "Because I'm right here. Can't you feel me?"
Oh.
And she just looked at me. She said, "What does that mean?" It's like, and at that point, I realized that she was not experiencing what I was experiencing.
Yeah.
Like they couldn't feel. They couldn't feel like, I didn't know how to explain it, but I knew that if I talked about it, people would get upset. So I learned early not to speak about it. So my inner world was kind of like my own private. The only person who we ever discussed these things about was with my brother, who was having similar experiences, and a lot of our experiences coincided with each other. And we would try to talk to our parents. They really didn't start to listen until, like I said, now from 12 until about 20, there was kind of like a break through
Okay.
puberty, and there was very little contact. I still had the empathy, like, with other people, but I wasn't getting visits and going on travels like I was until my brother turned 18, and we had a whole, like, if you had seen the movie, my brother got into the dark side of spirit, and if you have ever seen Poltergeist or Amityville Horror, I lived it. Seeing things, walls bleeding, demons, and this was happening in our home. So our internal world became external, and everybody in the whole family got to see it. And I think from that point on, they became afraid of me and my brother. We kind of got like a, yeah, it was just fear. You could tell, that my parents and my brothers and sisters, a lot of my friends, kind of shied away from me and my brother. And even in the church at the time, it was, I mean, they never blamed us for demonic attacks or anything like that, but they kind of looked at, like, why is this happening to you? In a semi, passive, judgmental type of way.
Sure.
But it wasn't, going through all of that. Eventually, I got to the point where that voice came back louder than ever. That connection came back, and this was, I guess, probably in the mid to late 90s, 95 or 98. I think it was like 98 or so. I had this profound experience. I literally, I don't know if I was out of my body, in my body, or I was everywhere. I was everything. I was everything. I got to experience what it was to be all that is, to be God. I knew everything. I was everything for an instant. Just
And
a
was
split.
there a lead up to this, or was this just a restarting of your
I
connection?
was researching a scripture. I remember the scripture. I think it was John 17:3. The Spirit blows where it wants to. You hear the sound of it, but where it comes from, you know not, and where it is going to, you know not. So too it is those that were born from Spirit. And as soon as I read that, I was, bam, like, and in a split second, I came back and I could not stop. I was laughing / crying for a half hour straight, and my friends didn't know what happened to me. By the time I could talk, and I just I was like, we have it all wrong. I was like, the religion, all of it, it's all wrong. From that point on, I stopped being a Jehovah Witness instantly. I stopped going to the meetings because I knew it was pointless, and my personality changed so drastically. I mean, I'm sure to this day my family still talks about it, about how their two younger brothers went crazy, because at the same time, the same day I had my experience, my brother also had the same experience, and about an hour later, we're trying to call each other on the phone, trying to explain to each other what happened, and it was from that point on, nothing has been the same. You know, it's been a constant connection, constant more weirdness. And
Well, okay. With this connection, this reestablishment, or maybe it's more of a growing of a connection than what you experienced when you were younger. How has that changed your life?
profoundly,
Yeah.
in every way, in every way. I remember now I had left it. Well, I gotten kicked out. Left / kicked out. Excommunicated disfellowship from the Jehovah Witness Church, and I moved out of the country. I moved back to Germany, and while I was there, and this is going back 2005. 2005. I had another experience, another visitation. And, you know, I had not remembered this since I was 12. But there, as I'm 30-some years old, and there in my living room is Taraya, the dragon.
The dragon, the teal dragon.
She's coming home from work one day, and you're like, "Oh, hey, Taraya."
No, I was doing a meditation. I was doing an oming. And I was sitting there and I was oming, and as I was oming, the room started to vibrate, and then as the room started to the walls disappeared, and I don't know if I was inside or out, but he was just there, and he looks at me, he's like, "Do you remember me?" And I just started crying, like because up to then it had been a lucid dream / experience. I was used to these type, but this was different. I wasn't sleeping. I was wide awake, and he was there in my living room, and told me that everything was going to change starting in 2008, that the energy of money was going to be going away, and this new energy was going to be coming in, and New Earth was going to be established. We talked, it seemed like for hours, but in reality, it ended up only being like 20 minutes. And I was thrown into this world, that kind of led me down the rabbit hole, and I've been traveling down that rabbit hole with my connection to spirit ever since.
So what were you doing, like, in your personal life in Germany at that point in time? Were you were working?
At that point in time in my life, I was a teacher. I was hired by corporate corporate companies, banks, financial institutions, and I taught English. I taught business English, corporate English, for people who didn't speak the language at all. So, like, if Deutsche Bank had their top managers that doing international banking, all international businesses done in English. So I would teach them how to conduct business, how to speak English, and how to for these large companies and banks. I was working for the Central Bank of Europe, Santander, Deutsche Bank, a few law firms. So I was teaching it, but while I was teaching them English, we were becoming friends. At least I thought we were becoming friends. And I was getting quite an education on how finance and government and law works. And I would get I would get invited to these parties. I was recruited by the Illuminati 3 times during this process. I actually been to Eyes Wide Shut parties, not parties,
Events.
meetings, events, whatever you want to call them. Both me and my brother have been there with, and it's very accurate what you see in the movie. They have the robes and the masks and the altars and all of it. That is real. It really, I can tell you firsthand from having been there. These people are real, and they're serious about what they do. And
so how do you? What happens when you get recruited by the Illuminati? How does that?
This is exactly how it happened. I'll tell you. I was at Barnes and Noble, and I had recently gotten kicked out of the church, which was Illuminati run right from the get-go. Like I
That particular church, or just
that particular
Jehovah's.
one.
Okay.
Yeah, very much so.
Were you aware of that at the time, or?
No, not at the time.
Okay,
No,
so
not
you're
at
going
the
to learn
time.
that.
But I was in the bookstore, and I was in the New Age section. Forgive me. Just looking at, and a man walked up to me, and he handed me a card. He said, "This is for you." Now, on the front of the card, it had an Egyptian winged disc and a serpent on a what's the name of that symbol? Caduceus.
Okay.
And on the back, there was an email address, and it says, "For more information, email," and it had a password. This password to this email address. And so I went home, and I was like, I'm looking at the card, and so I emailed. I was curious, and they sent me a reply email back, almost like I guess maybe an hour later. I got a reply email back and inviting me to take a look at this this group, right? They didn't call themselves Illuminati. They called themselves a secret society. It was a secret society, and they invited us to have an interview, to talk with them, and then we got invited to a
Are
party.
you saying your brother was somehow
Me
involved?
and my brother. Well, I got a +1 invitation, so I took my brother.
Okay.
And so they invited us to a party, and we went to this party, and there were very rich people there. I mean, there was Lexuses and nothing less than a BMW in the parking lot, and it was like this beauty spa. It wasn't a business, but like they were having the party there, and then like around midnight, everybody went down into the basement, and down in the basement, they had the basement was all open. They had this huge altar, and there was a pentagram drawn in the floor, and everybody put on robes, and we didn't know. Me and my brother, we were just kind of like, what the hell is going on here?
Sure.
But and they offered us. They said that, like, once we after they did this full moon ceremony or whatever, we went back upstairs, and then everybody was asking, well, what are your gifts, and we started, me and my brother, when we're together, we're dynamic in reading people, and we started reading everybody, and they were like, what order are you coming from? What level initiate are you? And we're like, we don't come from any order. We're not any level initiate, and they could not believe that we weren't initiated.
Or trained in some way,
yeah.
or developed.
And they wanted us to join their order, and just to sign on, they were going to give us $120,000 in our bank account, which at that time, and it's, we were desperate for money.
Sure.
And,
Okay.
it took some serious thought, but it didn't. Something about it just felt off. It just, something inside me was screaming, this is not, like, these people, like, they wanted us to use us for surveillance, and it just didn't seem right to me. And I told my brother, I said, I can't do this. These people aren't, who's going to give two niggas 120? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I can quote it because I said it to my brother. Who's going to give two niggas $120,000? You're going to end up, hung in a tree somewhere.
God.
No, and so we turned him down,
And this was in Germany, is that right?
No.
France?
This is right before I left the country.
Okay.
This is before I left the country.
I got
But
it.
you still got two other invitations.
Yes.
Or two other recruitment
Attempts.
Two other times. One when I was in Spain, and once when I got back from the United States. They asked 3 times, and then I turned down 3 times, and then never. The last time they says, if you do not reply to this email, you will never get another email again, because they move these meetings and locations every time. So if you don't get the email for the next one, then
you don't know where the next one is.
You don't know where the next one is.
Yeah.
And so I never replied. And after the 3rd time, they never really leave you alone. They keep tabs on you, especially after I started to. I was working with a lot of these people, in Europe, and I started to realize what everybody who's gone through the truth movement, realizes, that these people are not nice. They're just not nice.
Just not companions.
Yeah, and they don't play well with others, and so.
Well, it's very symbolic of the archetype of the bullies you remember in grade school. There's people that had deceiving, manipulative skills, as some had, presences where they just, used every resource they could to get what they wanted out of you. And I think as kids, many people pick this up and they try to develop, self-protective mechanisms, and they learn to identify these people quickly,
Yeah. And there's so much of the story that I left out. I mean, from the time when I was in school, they would take me out of class, and they would take me. There was always There were always 2 really nice women. Real 2 nice ladies would always come. They would take me out of class. I would go downtown, and they would take me to this office, and they would do all kinds of tests, and they would flash all these lights to put this mask on your face. I remember this. This was every so many months, and they would keep track.
What excuse would they use to get you out of school?
It was a special education program for what are they called? Not extraordinary, but like advanced students,
like gifted,
gifted student, program.
Were they just like 2 white women at you'd find on the street dressed the same, or are they like in suits and
They always had my favorite candy, which were little root beer barrels.
Okay.
um, they always smelled really nice, and they were really pretty. Young, I guess probably late 20s, early 30s, women, very, very nice, kind, like a school teacher, and these women were, I remember the one's name. Her name was Patty. I can't remember what the other one's name was, but they would always come and take us and do all kinds of tests, and
And again, us, you mean you and your brother on the same days?
my brother had similar experiences also, and the typical where they would hold the card up and, do you know what card I'm holding up? And I knew every card that they were holding up, but there was something in my head that says, don't answer that. Don't
answer.
Uh-huh.
I would purposely give the wrong answers, because it was just, I don't know why. I just didn't. I do know why now, but
Yeah.
there was definitely something that was with me, trying to lead me in the right direction for sure. So these things go on, and probably kids who are in the mainstream, they do these standard testing like every so many years. They're going to go through, and they're going to have like a special test, and they're going to identify the kids that have an aptitude for connecting, that are intuitive, or they monitor them, and once they have your number, they monitor you your whole life. I mean,
You're in their list of important people to take note of.
Yeah, and there are organizations that are complete. I mean, and I can tell you, because I've worked with these people. I used to get Christmas cards from Illuminati families and stuff, but they monitor the energy signature of everybody on the planet, and there's certain energy signatures that they're looking for, that they know are due to come during this period of time, and they track them. I'm sure most of, probably a lot of your audience are probably on that list.
Yeah.
So.
If I was going to say what I know about it, the Pleiadians know that there was a time travel technology that was acquired, like Looking Glass, and they basically did enough research of this sort of like what the New Age looked like, and they developed ways of interpreting the properties of how people spoke and how they talked and how they treated each other. And they basically work towards finding anybody with these abilities or with these tendencies, psychic, intuitive, empaths, all this, talking with spirits. And they basically said, we need to find these. And then when they arranged for new technology to be bartered and traded with non-terrestrials, they basically started asking for ways to read frequencies the way that the ships can, and like on readout displays and things like that, like on Google Earth, before there was even an internet. It was part of the reason why they pushed really hard for being behind every satellite that was sent up, right? Because they could use satellites for a different purpose as well. You can use satellites. You can even use a flashlight in their repertoire. It's very rare, but they'll use a flashlight, and they can find out exactly, like if you're in that upper register sort of situation.
Well, they monitor it very closely, and
yeah.
So it's been a really interesting, journey to where I am right now. It's made for, life has not been boring. I'll say that much.
It's not been dreary.
Yeah. Now, I was actually, to kind of go back a little bit, you were talking about your brother being affected with the dark side. Was
Yeah.
was that a temporary thing that he was going through, or and has he moved on from that, or what was that experience like for him?
Um,
I
now,
want to hear him say that he's the Luke
hold
and
on, my
he's the Darth
headphones just
Vader.
dropped out.
You know what I mean? Like, his brother's the dark side and you're the light side, and you're
We
holding it
call
together.
ourselves mirror twins.
Mirror twins?
At the time, now my brother, he kind of left the church before I did. And he's 2 years younger than me.
Right.
But when he turned 16, he got a girlfriend and moved out of the house and left the church, and he became quote unquote bad association, and he was basically ostracized from the church. The family wasn't allowed to talk with him, and he went into a really deep depression over it because I was the only member of the family that would speak with him. His mom, my parents wouldn't speak with him. Even to this day, a lot of my family still will not speak with me. That's been 25 years now. He went into a really deep depression, and he was separated from his family and all of his friends, and he started to consult a Ouija board to check up on us.
Mhm.
How's mom doing? How's dad doing? How's the family doing? And the Ouija board would answer. And then after a while, he would ask who's answering, and it would spell out a name, and it's like, who are you? Are you a man? Are you a ghost? And it said demon. And then he got scared, and it wouldn't speak with him anymore. And then he went to ask it a question, and I guess the what's that thing that slides across the it's
panel?
shot across the room. Yeah, it's shot across the room, and then a voice came out and says, "This form of communication is too cumbersome. Let's speak face to face." And he was introduced, and these quote unquote demons, they were very friendly to him, gave him really good advice, told him how to clean up his act, and started to he befriended them. They were very, very helpful, and they were showing him and teaching him many things. He had a stack full of notebooks filled with all the stuff he had learned, how to open portals and all this stuff, and he had become very, very advanced, much more so than I was. I've watched my brother do some amazing things, from levitate to yeah, to literally pick somebody up with one finger and throw them across the room. These were normal things.
Wow.
He could get you a glass of water sitting in the living room, and it would come floating out into the kitchen to you. These were the types of gifts that they were showing him. And then after, I guess, about a year of this kind of interaction, they says, "Oh, we've given you many things. We wish to ask something from you." And basically, they wanted to use his body. They says, you will be awake, but we'll be in control." And when he turned down their quote unquote offer, they were not happy. At that point, they turned on him and threatened to kill him and his family, to kill us. And he came to me for help, and I was still in the church at the time. And I got him to come back to the house, and told my family, and they allowed him to come, and they were going to pray over him. I could remember an incident where he had just told me about him being possessed, and he says, every time I fall asleep, I wake up and I'm in some place I don't know what happened. They take over my body when I sleep. And he had been up for like 5 or 6 days, and without any sleep, and before he finally came to me and told me what was going on. And right after he told me, and I said, let's go home and tell Mom and Dad. And I pulled up the car right in front of the house, and I went to open the door, and all the doors slammed shut, mine and his, and all the doors locked, and we could not get out of the car. And he says, they're mad, they're really angry. And I was like, they're here now? And he's like, yeah, and they're not going to let me talk anymore. And I watched my brother's body get pushed. I could see the cushion of the car seat getting, literally, his body was pressing in, like something was pressing him down in the seat, and he could barely breathe, and he couldn't talk. And I couldn't get my door open. I couldn't do anything. So the only thing I could think of was, to beep the horn. So I started beeping the horn, hoping my parents would come out and help me out of the car. And the horn beep, 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 and then everything in the car shut off. But I had beeped loud enough that my father came out on the porch and he was looking, and I'm trying to shout out to him, and he's like, roll the window. I couldn't roll the window down. I couldn't open the door. So he's trying to open the door on the outside. And I'm watching my brother choking next to me. And so I started to pray, and I had been trained, call out to Jehovah, and he will protect you in these times. And I called out to Jehovah and prayed, and nothing happened. And something in my head, I remember the scriptures. I had studied them, and I have a really good memory with that. So I remember the scripture. It says that each of you have your own team of angels that I have assigned to you. So instead of calling out to Jehovah, I said, if my angels are listening, help me now. And as soon as I said that, both doors flew open. I'm getting chills right now. Both doors flew open. It was, and I noticed this. It was my angels. It wasn't Jehovah who answered.
Right.
And they left. Whatever was there, they chased them away, and we were able to get out of the car. But it was at that point that I realized that the faith that I was in maybe not have the power that I thought it did.
I can imagine. With some very literal, very memorable experiences that would really sink in after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
we have a question.
Yes.
To toss out here. Let's see here. So when did you actually find out that these people were the Illuminati? What did you find out later in your life that the Illuminati was this secret society that you were contacted and attempted? I mean, like after the third time, or did you figure some of that out before?
I hadn't heard the term Illuminati until probably like around 2007, 2008.
Okay.
This was shortly after Taraya was reintroduced into my life and was telling me about all of these things that were going to unfold up to 2012.
So you just thought this was like a secret society, like, oh, there's just secret society out there and they do interesting things.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
they call themselves like, they call themselves brother and sister or alumni. They don't call themselves Illuminati. So I didn't know what that phrase when that came later on. I think that was probably 2006, 2007 when I actually heard that term and about the 13 families and who they actually were, and was able to put those pieces, make those connections, and figure all that out. But early on, there wasn't you couldn't go to YouTube and look this stuff up.
Right.
You didn't have a lot of the resources that are available and a lot of the information that's available today. So it was a lot more difficult getting information to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, like you had to know what book you were picking up at the library.
Right.
Basically.
And probably go through several books before you can actually get good information. Yeah.
Well, Bob, I mean, you've got a fantastic life story. I think, you know, it's probably a book that should be written on its own, right? Have you thought about that?
I was just telling Don, me and my brother are talking about writing a book about our
Your,
biography.
I mean, your strange biography, the abnormal stuff
Yeah.
that people would like to read about.
Well, I didn't even get into the part where we were on ships and interactions with galactic friends, and there's a lot of things that a
Well,
lot.
do we want to zoom right into that part, or was there a bridging part that you felt needed to be made?
Well, these a lot of these connections, you know, back in the '90s when well, when I was a child, they were elves,
Right.
and as I got older, they were demons, and
Hmm.
then as I got older, they were grays, and now these connections have always been. They've just changed my understanding of who these entities are. Even the quote unquote demons, they're just intergalactic beings, and they have lots of technology that makes it look like
Yeah.
that. But
These are people that are outside our realm of how they're accomplishing the feats of being with us.
so like I've always had connections with galactics, quote unquote angels, quote unquote demons, quote unquote whatever
Other
you want to call them.
dimensionals. Yeah, extra dimensionals.
They're same group, same.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like you had mentioned that you when we were talking that the Guardians are a group that you work with.
Yes.
Yes.
The Guardians started to come through like around 2013. I started getting communications from them.
Is that like telepathic or?
It's kind of like a download.
Okay.
It feels like you get like this whole packet of information that you unzip, and a lot of times they don't unzip. Like I'll know that I got a download, but sometimes it doesn't unzip until something triggers it.
Yeah.
And
Can I explain downloads a little bit for people who are not familiar with downloads? You'll find out that a lot of people get downloads. They're not necessarily familiar with the process, but this is kind of how it tends to go. You get a pang of insight. Maybe your thoughts stumble across something that you realize is a really interesting thought. And once you have that thought, there's like a cascading amount of like, I don't know how I know this. It's like it's going faster than my creative mind appears to be able to handle. So it's like such creative, dynamic information. You feel like this has no basis in anything that I already know, and that is the easiest way to identify a download. Now, usually the entry into the download occurs when you can actually swallow enough at a time, and sometimes download comes in parts too. So you actually have to vibrate and develop the keys within you to actually know what you're going to get. Because downloads are useless if you don't even know what you're actually receiving. And people do get downloads where they still don't know what they're receiving, but most downloads are interpreted as packets of extreme insight that answer a lot of questions, like you just got dumped a whole bunch of puzzle pieces sort of thing. And sometimes it's about stuff you never even thought about. Like
a lot of times it happen with somebody would just ask me a question, and as I'm posing the question in my head, this information will start coming out of my mouth, and you could call it spontaneous channeling, but I don't even like. It's like I'm listening to the answer at the same time as I'm giving it.
Yeah.
It's just coming like, and people would ask me, "Well, how do you know this?" And I was like, does it sound good?
Doesn't make sense to you.
This is a revelation to me just as much as it is to you. People don't understand that sometimes. I can tell you that all information, all knowledge, all wisdom comes from the same place. You know, it comes from the same place. And you tap into this, and it's presented to you in a way that's best suited for you. And in this, like, you know, for me, it's the Guardians, and some others it's the Collective, or the Council of Nine, the Council of... It's all the same field of consciousness that you're tapping into.
Yeah, I like to describe it sometimes as, you know, when the right question is asked, you know, then you get an answer. I think we ask a lot of questions, but we ask them from small perspective ways and for protecting ourselves kinds of ways. It's like the great answers to life show up when you're asking, you know, the questions from a special place. And so sometimes these keys are given to downloads when you're asking from the right place. You know, like, how can I change my life? That's one of the most powerful keys you can do that will give you some fast information. And some of it will be like, you got to stop bling, 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 bling. And it's immediate. People are like, oh, well, of course I'm not going to change my life today. I'm not going to give up pizza or whatever. You know, I'm not going to give up smoking. It's like, so even though we ask the questions from time to time that are really profound, many of our internal centers of habit prevent us from listening to that. You know, that inner voice of guidance that, you know, gets you from point A to point B the most efficient way possible. You know, like,
I would say what you're touching on right now is the core of the Guardian's message. You tuned right into it, Julien. You're keep going.
Well, I was just going to say that even the element of channeling is still a product of who you're asking to be there. You know, I mean, you were talking about this sort of place where you're just talking and you're not really sure, you know, and, you know, it's downloads. When I'm doing sessions, that's what it is. And, you know, maybe words for that are psychic. I'm not crazy about the word psychic. I think the word psychic, you know, implores this idea I can read your mind. I only get what the question is asked. And if they're asking me to read their mind, I'm not interested. I'm just not interested. If they're asking for me to read what's going on in their lives and what their guides have to say, that's fine. I'm okay for that, and it works. It works really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is like a way of, you know, am I comfortable being a part of these questions that bring forth certain information? And in some places, I'm not interested. Like, I am not actually interested in talking that much about, you know, dead people. So people go, oh, you're not psychic if you can't, you know, answer dead people. Or you're not psychic if, you know, whatever. There's lots of reasons to suggest I'm not, because I have a preference. And
Can
it's
I
not...
give
Yeah.
the Guardian's perspective on that?
Regarding channeling and
Regarding
actually
all
choosing.
It's the interconnectedness that you're experiencing. That
Yeah.
each universe is alive unto itself. Each universe is a life, and it has only one life. So when you find yourself in a universe, you are sharing one life. In other words, the life that you experience is being experienced in every living aspect of the universe. And everything in the universe is alive. It's one life. So I am experiencing the life of Julien, the life of Don, the life of every living being that's ever lived or ever will live. Every plant, animal, molecule, particle, you are experiencing all of it, because it's all one life. So literally, whatever it is, you cannot ever make a distinction from, there is no other. It's all one life. They just have different perspectives. They just have different.
And we give ourselves, our mind, permission to give ourselves these other perspectives. Because we
Right.
define our perspective by our growing up experience. We say, you know, everyone's talking about life like this. You learn your alphabet. You know, you learn one language, maybe two languages. That's kind of, you know, your world for, you know, as far as you know, it's everything that generally goes on. Now, Bob has talked about since he was young that he wasn't entirely on board with everything the way things were here, not by choice, just because this is what he was ready for. He was ready for more than what was going to be here. And these ideas especially, well, the point that he made that he learned how to not just talk about these things and to be such a strange kid. I mean, you could say it's a smart move if you still want to be able to hold on to it for a while. He did break off during his teenage years because his teenage years was almost, I'm assuming, all about figuring out if he cared to be, you know, an American or live a Western life or whatever it was. Like, you know, probably fishing through that. And when you actually, this reminds me of the element of choosing guides. You choose them. You could do it in your dreams or you could do it awake. Okay? The context is the asking, and you can even interview them. You get to almost pretend like you're interviewing in your head. Okay? Like through your imagination. You can define what it's going to be. Because every dimension, every possible being is out there. The only limit you have on what you can invite as a guide is your head. Is your mind's ability to perceive of the possibility. Of the perceive of the personality maybe that you're looking for. Okay? Now, some people want to say, well, you know, because I can make it so, does that really mean that there's other people, that there's actually other spirits? I said, yes. I'd say absolutely. They're all real. You knock on their door, right? You knock on the door of their vibration. And you let them in. The Pleiadians, why didn't I ever, you know, I had a sense that I talked with guides, but I asked and the Pleiadians answered. How is that? How did that work? Did I imagine? Did I create them? I moved to reality where they're real. Because not only that, I can visually walk their ship. I can visually, physically shake their hand. I can have dreams where it's just all night I'm hanging out, I don't know, playing their version of video games or something. These things happen, and these dreams are as real as real. Why? Because dreaming is a good way for you to step out of the responsibility of your current body, for the most part. And then you can, no biggie, you can be somewhere else, you know. It's like, you know, tiptoeing out of your bedroom window at night and, you know, playing in the woods and something like that, and then coming back in the morning. There's these elements, you know, how these, like werewolf kind of things? Werewolves and creatures that are affected by moonlight and sunlight? It's because they couldn't exist in various ways with certain energies. But that aside, this ability to step outside and connect with outside is something that you either are asking or you're not. And if you start asking, you're going to ask, and you're going to find ways that this occurs. I love Bob sharing his time with us today because you get maybe a perspective you've never heard of before that really ties in. I mean, he's, you know, I was attracted to Don and to Bob, both because of what they had to me was a case of severe authenticity. Okay? And I say severe in the most loving way because they were, I felt every word was not for protecting a part of themselves. Okay? And that's why I did the show with Bob, and I chose him amongst all my, you know, possible wingmates. And with some, you know, he was there as well because I'd never done radio shows, and he had some experience with that. And he really helped me ground in a lot of the expansion we went through there. And I knew, you know.
If anybody wants to check out those old archives of the transitioning show.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a bunch on my YouTube, but I think there's a bunch on the IUV
Yeah.
website that might still be up. I think it's still up. We'll get you a link to make sure you can catch all that. Actually, you know what? There's links on my website, julianwells.com. You can find links to the transitioning recordings. Forgot about that. But Bob, you know, we've probably got about a half hour left. Don, did you have some other questions? I had some questions for Bob, but I want to make sure you maybe got through your list.
You know, I've got post-it notes all over the place with ideas for talking with Bob. We're gonna have to have him back. I know that.
I think so. Like,
Yes.
you know.
And we're gonna have to make sure that book gets written, no matter what. But no, go ahead with your questions now, and we'll see if we can work out some of these other topics in. If we have time.
So, as not many people are aware, or maybe they are, Bob and I have not spent a lot of time talking in the last year and a half or so. So I was going to ask him a little bit about the last year and a half that we haven't done a whole lot of communicating together.
That was this post-it note. Okay.
Oh, okay. So Don, if you don't mind, give us a little. If people are not aware, you did go to Morocco when there was a great bunch of people that went out to Morocco, and where Heather Touchy is from, and sort of did a bit of like an ashram kind of world or something. And we'll just talk about when you came back and sort of like the big things that hit you when you came back, because I think you gave me a call and said we gotta talk when you came back from Morocco.
Well, it was Morocco was an experience in itself.
Yeah.
And
that's what I was saying. Let's just go with afterwards.
We'll have to go all the way back to 2012 first.
Okay. We'll go ahead.
Why? Back in 2012, which was the first, my first full-on telepathic, interdimensional communication that I have ever had. It was something, and it happened on my birthday, April 15th, 2012. I had an experience, and
a note for others: a lot of the time they do tend to show up on your birthday.
Yeah, it was. I connected with this this voice, and it was so clear, and I got to see everything that was going to happen all the way up until the event. I was shown multiple different versions of timelines, all going up to the event. But there was, and as I'm going through this whole trip, or whatever you want to call it, I was told, when this is over, you're not going to remember this. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to forget this. There's no way I'm going to forget this. And, of course, I did. I immediately forgot. But there was one portions of it that I did retain, which always happens. They never could wipe my memory completely. It never works. One of the things that I remembered very clearly was the death of my best friend at the time. He was my neighbor, and it's funny because I told him about this, that this was all going to happen. I was like, you're going to want to kill yourself. I'm going to be thousands of miles away. I'm not going to be able to help you. And all this was going to happen. And I told him, you're going to have seizures and this and that and blah, blah, blah. It threw me into a panic, literally. I called my brother, and we tried to talk about it, and he says, you're seeing a possible future. And I was like, you don't understand, but then I realized that, if you hold on to something like that, it could drive you crazy, and it was driving me crazy.
I bet.
Going back to Morocco, was in October of 2014. Yeah, October of 2014. I get a phone call from my friend, my best friend in Pennsylvania. And he tells me, I'm sitting here with a gun to my head. Tell me why I shouldn't pull the trigger. And I reminded him of our conversation 2 years earlier. And I says, remember I told you this was going to happen. I would be thousands of miles away and I wouldn't be able to come to you. I says, I'm coming. So I left Morocco and I came back to Pennsylvania, which is where I am right now, to be with my friend. Unfortunately, what I saw still happened. He ended up committing suicide, and it was for me it was wow. It wasn't something that I can't say that I wasn't expecting, because I had the vision 2 years earlier.
But it's almost like you didn't believe it.
Like, almost not like, but like I thought I had averted it.
Hmm.
And what it showed me really, it was a lesson that each soul has its own purpose. And I was able, what made it easier was I was able to connect with him after he died. And he told me, he goes, you saw the vision, so that my higher self showed you its plan. You know, and it's not something that was for you to change, you know, but you know, I mean, it actually happened. Like, I was there when it happened. He's like, I got to spend my last moments, and you gave me the strength to do what my soul contracted to do. And if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to fulfill it. And but it was quite a traumatic experience for me. You know, a realization and an eye-opener. But at the same time, I realized that everything that led up to that was for a purpose. You know, and so it was. Since that time, I have.
And when was that? In 2014, by the way, that went down. Excuse me, that you got you got the vision in 2012.
Got the vision in 2012.
And you got back from Morocco in October, and you learned your lesson when he died. Was it in October too?
April of 2015.
April 2015. Okay.
And it's funny because from that vision I had in 2012, and the voice I connected, it was Heather. Mm-hmm. And when we were in Morocco, when I heard the first Heather interview, I realized that I had spoken with this woman. She was with me on this whole journey all the way up to the event. She was one of the beings that was showing me all of this. And I had this conversation with her. I says, do you remember visiting me? And she goes, I remember visiting all of you. And she goes, do you remember the conversation? You kept saying that you were going to remember. And I said, I remember a couple things. And I do remember a time. And I thought it was the time of the event. And she goes, what time was it? I said it was 4:44 p.m. And then she just chuckled. She never really gives anything away.
No, she doesn't.
But when I came, like 2 years later or 3 years later, when Justin died, I noted the time of his death was 4:44 p.m. So it was another confirmation that a lot of, that there's certain things that are in motion that aren't for you to change. That you have to accept each soul's journey, each soul's choice, because to think that you know better than that soul's higher self, to think that you know a better course for them or a better lesson for them,
at any point for anything ever in their life, not even soul but their own self, I would say.
Right.
Like, do you know better for anybody? Admit
No.
maybe no, you don't. And that's a good starting point for a relationship with anyone.
You know, and it's it also showed me the illusion of death, because my relationship with him is changed, but we've gotten a lot closer, you know. And it wasn't something that I was devastated over, and I was really able to refocus myself through, because what happens when someone dies, everyone that's close to that person gets closer together.
Mhm.
You know, the human connections become very, very tangible and very real, and it opened up so many hearts. And I immediately saw the positive effect of what he did. And we had a conversation after his death. He came and visited me, and he told me, he's like, you know, I was never a good speaker. I'm not a leader or world changer, but this was something I could do. This was something, and there was a whole bunch of karmic lessons that were going on,
Oh
because
yeah.
his girlfriend, who he had a little girl with, her father had died in a similar way, and she was, you know, defining herself by that pain.
And
And
now
this
she
was
got a second chance to take a look at what that really meant.
exactly. And
So many of our lessons are just that simple, aren't they?
yeah, and he loved her enough to provide that lesson for her. He had incarnated for it, and he goes, this is what I could do. And so, like, a lot of times, you know, people, like, especially when you deal with suicide, people, and you're going to see a lot of it. You're going to see a lot more of this. And I'm not saying that, you know, to scare people or
Or
anything.
make it a suggestion.
Yeah, or make it a suggestion, you know, but there are going to be a lot of beings that make that choice, you know, to leave, and it may not be suicide. It may be, you know, they might choke on a peanut. Who knows? But that will transition out of this reality in various different ways. Um,
And very likely people you know and care about too.
yeah,
I
and
mean, that is hard too.
it can be, but
And again, these are soul decisions that are being made by all of these individuals.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I
So I do want to indicate, you know how we can do anything, we can be anything, you know, we can do all. I think some people get caught up with the idea that we affect other people's souls. They're nigh impossible. It's nearly impenetrable to affect someone's soul. You can
exactly.
affect, you know, their lives here, but, you know, when they're not here, they're free of you entirely. So don't worry about this idea that, you know, you can actually ruin people for real in the world.
Well, I can tell you, after the event, all those boundaries, of the boundary of what you think is death, because it really doesn't exist.
No.
It really doesn't exist.
I
Um,
know. I
Hmm.
know. I mean, most people's fears are rooted in the fact that you die,
yeah, and
right? How much time is wasted, how much energy is wasted on protecting that or not honoring a shifting process. It's like a robot that's trying to keep itself alive by constantly repairing itself and to never know the liberation of a true infinity where you just walk into another stage of life. And the idea of a body is like, I don't know how to say it. It's like less than a Mario Brother loss, you know, Mario Brother game loss. It's less important than that with regards to what you still can do. Like you could make a copy of yourself instantaneously, and usually what they do, that's what happens when you're in heaven. I'm guessing. I mean, for the most part, that's what I've been shown. That you're walking there with a copy of yourself. But But go ahead, Don, if you were gonna. I know I got us off a tangent, Don.
No, tangents are good. No, go ahead, Bob. I think Bob was going on with an idea.
Well, there's after the event, and the event is it's a transitioning into a new way of being, you know, and all of us are preparing for it in different ways. All of us are on that path, and you go 50, and it seems like a long time, 50, 100 years in the future, all of those boundaries are gone. The boundary between life and death and that dimensions, we're interacting with all of it.
Yeah.
So like this, and when you're having experiences right now where a lot of people are beginning to connect more with the fullness of themselves, are connecting more with the fullness of connecting with that common life core essence of being, connecting with all that is, and everybody's having an acceleration. And we talked about, like, you know, before about what was happening in Morocco, and basically, if you've ever seen the movie The Sphere, and if you haven't, watch it, or South Park Imagination Land, 3 episodes. It will tell you. It'll tell you what's going on, and this is what's happening right now. And we experienced it like in a prelude to it in Morocco, where all of your thoughts are manifesting, all of your dreams and all of your fears are manifesting. They're becoming real. So what is going on inside you becomes monumentally important in this energy, because the energy that we experience in Morocco, I'm feeling it here. All over, no matter where you go, you can't escape it now. Yeah. Which means that people's thoughts, your internal emotions, and all the thoughts that are associated with those emotions are going to become real. And so what's going on inside you, if you're having a lot of dis-ease inside you and you don't have inner peace inside you, there's going to be some turbulence in your life. You know?
Yeah. I would liken it to tomorrow, everyone's going to have their cars replaced with a Formula One. And you get the keys, and they hand you the Formula One. And, you know, that's the deal. They decided everyone is going to now use a Formula One, like, racer. Because you walk out, and you're like, I don't know how to handle this thing. I don't even know how to drive this thing. I'm not comfortable. Unless, of course, you were yourself, and you happen to be like an IndyCar racer, and now the whole world was like IndyCar racing to you. You know what I'm saying?
It's gonna get really intense. I can tell you, this is no joke, and you can't escape it. Everyone is going to learn very quickly to become responsible for their experience. It's extremely important for people, and if I want to leave anyone with a message, you know, for this time period and the energy that we're in and what's coming, because I can tell you what's coming is going to be very intense. People, light workers, everyone, all of humanity, we are responsible for creating this world. Stop blaming. Stop blaming. Please, please, stop blaming. We are all responsible. And once you understand that we are responsible, we have created this world, we must own that responsibility. The Guardians say, we are not here to save you. We are here to give you an opportunity to save yourselves, because you are responsible for this world. You are responsible for creating it. We create the governments. You give your power away to the governments, right, and then complain with what they do with it. That is no way to move forward. I see lots of people, focusing on who's quote unquote the enemy, our oppressors, they are slave masters. Well, these concepts is an extreme irresponsible way to behave for a sovereign being. These ideas are an extremely irresponsible way. Basically, what the Guardians are saying, it's time to grow up. Wake up, humanity. You are no longer children in this universe. Take responsibility for what you have created and change it. And that is every being's responsibility. You cannot sit and wait for the government to change your world or for some announcement to happen to change your world. Be the change. Take your power back. And if you don't like what the government, then take the power that you gave them away. It's that simple. And this is, the period of time that we're moving into is going to be a highly accelerated one, and there's going to be a lot of changes happening. This is positive energy, but anybody who's gone through this whole transformation, you might have had an idea that finding enlightenment was going to be rainbows and butterflies and unicorns flying all over the place. That is not the case.
Yeah.
It's very challenging. It is but at the same time, it is very rewarding. I'm not trying to sugarcoat, and I'm not trying to instill fear, because what they want us to understand is our true power. That each of us are creating our own reality. Like literally, if you believe something to be true, the laws of physics around you are going to change to make your perception seem real.
You could be the next Superman.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is,
that's how it can actually arrange. Don?
But what you're also saying, Bob, is all beliefs are real.
All beliefs are real. Choose which one you want.
Right.
The belief still has to be radiated within you. Like you still have to build a resonance, which is sometimes doing with repeating, sometimes doing with building your memory or having a strong memory association. That's how your body says, this is what we got to have in our vibration. This is very important. And it shifts your body practically genetically or DNA level to make you what's going to happen next.
Exactly. You will literally, whatever it is that you accept as your truth, I don't care if you're the only one that believes that. It's true for you.
Yeah. You make gravity too. Can you believe that? You're just accepting it as a good suggestion at the moment that it stay on. Oh, is the world really flat or is it really round? It's both, as far as I'm concerned.
This is my answer for that. The world is a holographic projection that shows you what you want it to see, what you want to see. So for those who are looking for a flat Earth, they're going to see all the evidence of a flat Earth. Those who are looking for a round Earth, they're going to see all the evidence of a round Earth. It's a holographic reality.
However, I will give credit to the flat Earth people for wanting to investigate the boundaries of the illusion by bringing up information that pushes the boundaries of the illusion of a round Earth necessarily.
And for me, it's neither. It's both. It could be either.
Yeah. I was just giving them that investigative, creative skill under their belt.
This is. I have a message from that they said. If you understand this, that this is really the only truth that anyone can ever say. You are something experiencing something. That's all you know. And when you look at that equation, something experiencing something, that's all you are. And when you understand that there is no separation between you and your experience, then you'll understand what needs to be done. You'll automatically move into an understanding and a wisdom where you start to become responsible, because you are always experiencing yourself. You know, that story of the egg. If you ever want look at Andrew Weir, the egg, where
Okay.
you know, it's a little short story, and it explains the reality in a sense that helps you to move into that idea of interconnection, that there's no separation. It helps to move you out of separation, and that's what's going to be needed in order to move forward. Otherwise, it's going to drive you insane.
Well, speaking of insanity, you'll probably wonder how some of the preeminent physicists, like Einstein, ever got to the theory of relativity. You know, he's got the E equals mc squared, and if something is experiencing something is the more critical, it's basically, you know, x times b or something. Like, that's all there is. It's a variable times a variable, factored with a variable.
But something's on both sides of the equation.
Correct. There are two variables. You fill in the I mean, when you calculate variables, forget doing E equals mc squared. That's the equation for, like, everything we know about our experience and dimension and fluidic awareness with the one, right? So within that, you could call it this, all that this is that we ever know. Fits within that equation, which means if you ever want to figure out if it's out of the equation or not, factor it into the equation. Something happening is something. Is this good or bad? Or, you know, is this right or is it wrong? You say, well, my mom is fighting with my sister. Something factored with something. Is that good? Yes, it always is. There's no equal signs. It's just the end of it. I like the simplicity of it. I really do.
It's really, it's, you know, I love the conversation that you guys are bringing forward and being able to talk about these things, because it's really important, you know, especially now, to help people. And I was talking with Don yesterday, to have some sort of context. We have an opportunity right now, and in the next coming months, this window of opportunity is going to really be accelerated. And the universe already has made its choice of what it's going to do. You know, the Earth and Gaia, it's already made its choice. It's most of humanity that's confused.
Yeah.
You know, it's most of humanity. That's only where the confusion is. But once you make that choice, right, to move in line with nature, things are going to start to become a lot easier for you. Resistance is going to be very rough.
Yeah, and if you don't know what your resistance is, you're going to find out.
Well, and I think that's something to step into, because honestly, I really believe if you're here at this moment, it's because this is part of your soul journey, and that this is something that you're prepared for, whether it looks like it on the surface or how it plays out in media or different ways of evaluating and judging other people. If you're here, you are here for this journey, and it's part of your soul journey, and that's the important part of it. And things are going to accelerate. Things are going to become exciting or bumpy, or however you choose to view it. But at the same time, it's time to get it done.
Yeah.
We're
Formula One
there.
keys, Don. Formula One keys.
Formula One keys. There we go. Yeah, there was a picture in the paper the other day of a Maserati half off the expressway in Miami here, and on a railing, like trying to fall off. So somebody missed their turn, and
Well, I think that when you see things happening, You know, when you start getting that really harsh splitting headache, the simple idea of I've got brain cancer and I'm experiencing an upgrade. So
Yes.
that, I mean, your perception on how you choose to perceive what's going on is going to lead you to where you go, literally. And those little ideas that you have, you know, if you look at some of the things you say, oh, we're headed for World War III, that, you understand, when you do that, you are making a declaration to the universe for your future. This is what it means to be responsible. You know, how you choose to see the world in front of you, how you choose to see what's going on around you, is those perception, those little micro choices that you make in that moment are so profound. They determine everything.
I mean, how do you think your world got interesting? You had to talk enough of it into existence.
Yeah.
Since you're a baby, you had to start talking into existence before you start remembering it. Oh, I did that. You get the first, you know, when you first start realizing you're thinking and talking, you have memories, like go back to your oldest memories. It all starts where you entered into a world where you didn't think you actually had an effect on anything in the way that now you could through communication at another level. It's like an evolutionary plane, 3 years old. We're going through something that is as critical as that moment right now. We're in it.
Ancient Chinese proverb, and nobody knows who wrote it, but it goes, be careful of your thoughts, because your thoughts become your words. Be careful of your words, because your words become your actions. Be careful of your actions, because your actions become your habits. Be careful of your habits, because your habits become your character. Be careful of your character, because your character becomes your destiny. And those are such wise words right now.
Very much.
And this is the time where everyone is going to take responsibility. You know, everyone has to take responsibility for their realities, and you know, this is our time. You know, if you want to experience the fullness of power, and I hate to quote a cliche, with great power comes great responsibility, but it's true.
Spider-Man.
Well, it's like, you know, Dad giving you the shotgun.
Yep.
You good at 3 years old? You good at wherever you want to just let that happen? You know? You got to carry on the family name of holding the shotgun. And it's like, you know, you never have to use it. I'm getting silly. We should wrap up here.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up, I do have an advertisement. I'm going to throw my time in for mentioning that we have a workshop 2 weeks from now, Friday 2 weeks from now, and we still have spaces to join, and you can go to julienwells.com, and you'll find the links that get you to the workshop page and the booking sites from there, and it's actually, we're going to have our next Exploring the New Age show next Wednesday. So make sure to join us at 6 o'clock. It's my birthday, mind you. So
that's right.
If there's something to say about downloads, you're going to get something, I'm sure, from
maybe
me.
we can do that live on the show. We can watch you getting your download and just have you babbling it out.
Yeah, and which brings actually to the error of my point. It's not 2 weeks from now. It's 1 week from now. We're doing it next weekend.
Yes, next weekend.
Next weekend. Sorry. I'm going back to when I had a nice cozy buffer of 2 weeks to tell everybody about it, because I only just found out. I only just stepped into the energies of this, what we're going through right now. And, you know, in a workshop situation, it would help people ask questions, and I'm going to pose questions, and there's going to be certain meditations short meditations. I promise no really long ones. And we'll cover some really profound subjects about life, reality, and you basically at the center being a creator of your existence. Which puts, good perspectives in these 5 ways that I particularly want to share. But that having been said, find me on Facebook, the Julien Wells public page, and you can find Dawn there as well. That's your preferred spot, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably the easiest place to get a hold of me.
And Bob, I see you're muted. Where should people contact you best, or find out about what you're up to?
I'm on Facebook as well.
Okay.
You could find at Nubius12, Nubius 12, or email at nubius12@gmail.com.
Great.
And I really appreciate spending time with you guys. I had a really great time.
Good. Well, thanks for coming.
I had such a great time. I feel like, we should just get around to this more often and just record it and post it or something. Maybe not
Definitely.
wait for an airing time or something. So
perfect. But we do want to have you back. I hope you can come back.
We do want to have you back live on the air for people to ask those questions. I think you might have stunned a couple people with what you shared tonight, and they need a little time to digest
exactly
the value of what sort of like wave just hit them.
I'm saving my post-it notes, so.
Oh, you saved your. Okay.
I'm gonna save them.
I would love to come back because we didn't even get into talking about what we're doing currently right now and the world happening, and there's a lot going on.
Let's just make some recordings here and there. I just agree to jump on Skype and just put something we can share from time to time, because I can get that up really quickly.
Yeah, well, you've got my Skype and you've got my phone number. Give me a call anytime.
Yeah.
We'll connect.
Absolutely. You hear that, everybody? We're going to be hearing a lot more from Bob. He's got a lot more to share, and we'll get some stuff out. And, of course, we will make sure we're booking him in our next slot, I think. So, cheers.
Drink lots of water. Eat lightly.
Perfect.
Eat lightly. Oh, my God. That's what I'm forced into this diet right now. I have a stomach the size of, like, a pebble. But anyways.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Bob. Thanks, Julien.
Good night.
Thanks,
Don, Bob.
Good night.
Okay.